Greetings, welcome back to my channel, and today we are making cinnamon rolls, but Funfetti cinnamon rolls. I use active yeast, which means it doesn't need to bloom, so what I do is just add it to my flour and incorporate that as best as possible. I like to use two different sugars because it adds to the texture of the cinnamon rolls. You know, like you have a nice cookie having a soft chewy texture, this is much like that. The final two dry ingredients that I'll be adding are salt and mixed spice. The spice is very optional, but I like it because it adds just a bit more flavor to the dough. It is important to use room temperatured ingredients while baking as it's easier to combine. However, I like to have a bit of melted butter, which is going to bring up the temp. However, the milk and the egg that I'm going to add will bring it back down to a moderate temperature. Combine our wet and dry ingredients. I like to use my hands while doing this, but you can always use a wooden spoon or anything you are comfortable with. So what I like to do is just push around the flour and get it all saturated before I add the remaining wet ingredients. So I continue doing that and I start to form a dough in the container before I pour out and start kneading. We are no strangers to kneading dough. However, with cinnamon rolls, you don't need to knead the dough that long. You just want to knead it until well combined, which can take 3 to 5 minutes depending on how good you are at kneading. After you have completed kneading, you are going to cover for 2 hours and allow it to double in size. The cinnamon sugar is very simple as it is just brown sugar and cinnamon powder. You can always add more powder to your liking. You can use less if you don't like cinnamon powder that much. This is what my dough looks like 2 hours after resting. I am going to remove it from the container and roll it out. I do advise using some flour to limit the amount of sticking, but I forgot. So when you're at this step, just sprinkle a little flour onto your dough or onto your surface so that it doesn't stick. After rolling out the dough, we're going to add sprinkles. You just want to add just a bit, not all of it at once, because we're going to be repeating these steps. So add your sprinkles, press lightly, and move on. I am going to laminate the dough, which is just to fold it over onto itself. I'm folding into a square shape to make it easier when I am doing the final roll. What we're doing now is just adding sprinkles until we're satisfied with our sprinkle to dough ratio. So we're going to continue rolling the dough out flat, adding the sprinkles, folding the dough onto itself, and repeating those steps until we are completely satisfied with the amount of sprinkles present in our dough. After you're satisfied with the amount of sprinkles in your dough, we're going to roll it out and prep it for our cinnamon sugar. As best as possible, keep a square shape as it's easier to roll up, but mine just decides it never gonna stay square, so we have a little circle situation working with, but we make it work. You don't want your dough too thin, you want it to be about a 1/4 inch thick, and just roll it until you get to that. Because of the richness of the dough, I do not use a lot of butter here, but I use about 1.5 tablespoons to lightly cover the dough so that the cinnamon sugar has something to stick to. So what you want to do is just get your butter room temperatured and just gently slide that all over your dough. It is best to use your hands when applying the cinnamon sugar, as you have better control of the amount of sugar that you release onto your dough. So what I like to do is get a handful of sugar and just gently sprinkle it over the dough until it is completely covered. Now you want to start to roll your dough, and this can prove to be very frustrating. So what we want to do is get a lift on the entire horizontal end of the dough. So once you have that lift, you're going to start tucking it onto itself and rolling it over. So you're going to want to continue doing this, but you want to do it as tightly as possible so it does not unravel. So gently lift, tuck, and roll. After we have tightly rolled our dough, we're going to cut it. I like to use a serrated knife as it is the easiest option for me. So what I do is just I try to do it as quickly as possible to cut the dough. You don't want to squish the dough, so as soon as the knife comes in contact with the dough, just go down as fast as possible. When stacking them into the pan, I like to have the ends, you know, that little last lip of dough, I like to have them going together so that when they bake, they are joined. Once you have completely stacked all your cinnamon rolls into your pan, you're going to allow them to proof for another 30 minutes, which is going to have them rise a bit more. While our dough is proofing, we're going to work on our cream cheese frosting, which is just cream cheese, icing sugar, milk, and a bit of vanilla. The vanilla is going to change the color of our frosting, but that's fine. So you want to work with room temperature cream cheese to make it easier to whip. So once you have whipped it to a smooth consistency, you can begin adding your powdered sugar gradually because it's powder, so it's going to be messy and it's going to be harder to mix in with the creaminess of the cream cheese. So once you have incorporated all your powdered sugar, or once it gets to a thick consistency where you can no longer mix it, you're going to add your milk mixture to that and just whisk it out until it is smooth. We are going to bake our cinnamon rolls for 20 to 30 minutes until done. Now the rolls at the ends of the pan will be darker than the ones in the middle just because they're in contact with the pan. Now this is what my cinnamon rolls look like after they have finished baking. You can unroll them and you see how soft it is. It is very delicate, it is very nice, it's great. This brings us to the end of yet another video, and this was very fun for me to make because of the sprinkles. I do hope you enjoyed.